Yes, hello, you're watching the Sunday Politics for Yorkshire, Lincolnshire and the North Midlands. Coming up today, as the Chancellor promises to cut green taxes on our energy bills, the renewable industry hits back, claiming it'll put jobs in jeopardy and could lead to blackouts. We'll also be discussing to what extent the Co-op brand has been tarnished by the Paul Flowers scandal with our guests today, who are Labour MP John Mann, Liberal Democrat MP David Ward and Independent MEP Godfrey Bloom. We'll talk to you in a moment, but the Chancellor looks set to cut many green taxes in his autumn statement on Thursday. So-called green levies add more than £100 a year to the typical household energy bill. But the proposals have prompted a backlash from the renewable energy lobby, who say that without green taxes, thousands of new jobs could be lost across Yorkshire and Lincolnshire, and we could be facing blackouts. In this corner of East Yorkshire, many people have become used to living in the shadow of wind turbines. However, the boss of this caravan repair business is not a happy man. Peter Mills has just received his latest energy bill and wants to know why it's so high.
None of us as householders or business premises see anything for this tax that we're being forced to pay. It's not a case of we can opt out if we want to. We just keep on paying, and I don't think myself anybody's going to gain from it, and I don't think the government even know where the green tax is going to.
According to the Department of Energy and Climate Change, consumers are charged a range of green levies on their bills, all designed to reduce the UK's carbon emissions. It adds up to £112 a year for the typical household. Of course, there is a different side to this story, and leading figures in the renewable energy sector claim that green taxes are vital if thousands of new jobs are to be created on the Humber.
Off the east coast of England, there is a massive potential to be developed. And because of that, the east of England, and particularly around the Humber, there is the opportunity to develop a world-beating industry exporting to many parts of the world as a result. So I think there's a huge prize on offer if we can get this policy environment right in the next few weeks.
This week, plans for a giant offshore wind farm in the Bristol Channel were shelved after the German energy firm RWE said it was not the right time for the project. Some fear other energy firms could start to think twice about developments off the east coast.
This is not just about the renewable low-carbon agenda, it's about providing just energy. And if we don't do this right, then lights could go out. So I think the government needs to be very careful about changing course in any way on these particular parts of the energy bill.
Business leaders hoping to attract new investment into the green energy sector say it's vital the Chancellor sends out the right message in his autumn statement on Thursday.
Now is the right time. We're in the best located place in the UK, if not in Europe, to make the best of investments in offshore renewables. So come on, Mr Osborne, help us out.
With Labour pledging to freeze energy bills if they win the next election, the Chancellor is under pressure to secure a better deal for customers while ensuring our lights stay on in future. So, Godfrey Bloom, are we facing blackouts if green energy taxes are cut?
Well, we're certainly facing blackouts, as I told this programme in 2006, but not for the reasons that you hear there. We have a shambolic energy policy. Wind turbines simply don't work. Offshore wind turbines are the most expensive source of energy the world's ever seen in its history. The whole thing is a nonsense. We're putting billions of pounds of subsidies into wind turbines. Nobody would manufacture wind turbines if it wasn't for the subsidies. Drax, which is a huge power station, is now burning wood, which is shipped in from Canada. The whole thing is a complete nonsense. Yes, we will be seeing blackouts in 2015, as I anticipated we would, but not for these reasons.
David Ward, what message do you think the government is sending out to the renewables industry at the moment?
Well, a mixed one at the moment. We've got 18 months or so to go before a general election, and there's going to be ever-increasing opportunities, if that's the right word, for Lib Dems and for the Conservatives to differentiate themselves. Lib Dems are obviously far greener. The Tory party have had a bash at that for a while and pretended that we're green. They're not really green, and that's now becoming very evident.
John Mann, is it right that hard-pressed families have to pay £112 a year on top of their energy bills in green levies?
No, we should nationalise the electricity companies. That's what I'd do. But I totally disagree with Mr Bloom. He wants us to be reliant on the future, on Russian gas and Chinese coal. I don't. I want us to be self-sufficient in energy, and therefore green energy is critical to this country being self-sufficient and not relying on other countries for our energy, which in my view will cost us a fortune in the future, but also endangers our national security.
So does John Mann have a point, Godfrey Bloom? Are we at the mercy of Russian gas suppliers?
Well, it's funny that Mr Mann says that. I don't remember just saying that. I don't know whether you do, Tim, but no, I think we have our own gas. We have potential shale gas. We have coal, and we should follow the trail that the Americans have beaten, a wonderful trail. Their energy prices are half those in this country. We have the most expensive electricity in the world, even more than Germany. We have 60% higher prices than Germany. So it's our policy that's at risk. It's been a shambles, and I'm very, very surprised that Mr Mann, representing a working class community, can treat them in such a cavalier manner.
John Mann, are you treating your constituents in a cavalier manner?
Well, Bloom can say what he wants, but Germany, with 14% renewables, that's partly why they're getting cheaper prices than us. Renewables plays its part, but I'm not having this lie from him that we have our own gas and our oil. We're importing it. And the danger is that we become more reliant, particularly on the Russians, for imported gas and oil into the future. And like other countries in Eastern Europe, we'll end up being ad hoc to the Russians who will just pump the prices up. We need to become self-sufficient, and that's why the offshore wind farms on the Humber Estuary are a vital part of what we need into the future. That'll keep prices down in Britain, and to keep prices down in the short term, we need to freeze them and squeeze the profits of these energy companies who are ripping us all off.
Tim, the Bristol scheme I don't think was ever viable, and it was opposed locally by the local council. It didn't have planning permission. But if you look at the Dogger Bank scheme with 600, potentially 600 turbines on there, think of the amount of jobs all of that will create as it's actually put together. But then we'll give us somewhere in the region of 10% of our electricity needs as a result of that green energy for the future. And that's the other thing you mentioned. You asked me earlier on, what's the message? We must have a concerted, and I would hope all-party concerted view on moving forward on green energy, because you're talking about billions of pounds of investment.
And you're
over
not
many,
convinced you're getting that from the Conservatives,
years.
is that what you're saying?
Well, we're clearly not getting from the coalition government now, because they're going, I think the Conservatives, part of the coalition government, is going soft on it. It's not popular with many on the right wing, like Godfrey, within the party. They know that, but I think that across the House of Commons, all parties, I think there is a common consensus, really, a majority that are in view of green energy.
But what do you say to these areas of high unemployment, like Hull and Northern Lincolnshire, Godfrey Bloom, who need these jobs?
Well, they're bogus jobs, aren't they, for a start? Let's have a look at Germany and the Iberian Peninsula. They are rushing away from this renewable source of energy to go back into coal as an emergency process, because their chemical industry and their automobile industry are talking about setting up elsewhere in North America and China. These jobs are bogus. Now, if you ask the people of Hull and the East Riding, on the south bank of the Humber, whether they would sooner have VAT at 5% and their business rates halved and their national insurance rates for employees halved, they'd say they'd sooner have that. They might as well build steam engines and throw them into the sea. Offshore energy is 12 times the cost of conventional power. It's unsustainable, and it's about time people start to admit it. There's been a huge mistake. It's a scam. Let's redraw. Let's have another thing.
Many will disagree. I'm sure it's a debate we will come back to again. Now, to what extent has the Co-op brand been damaged by the Paul Flowers scandal? The fallout from the revelations about the former Labour councillor and Methodist minister from Bradford continues, as do the questions about his controversial appointment as chairman of the Co-op Bank. Here's Len Tingle.
This was planned as a spectacular tribute to 150 years of retail and banking success for a giant organisation still owned by its members. It's just 2 weeks since the Queen opened the Co-op's new £100 million headquarters in Manchester, but the celebrations were totally overshadowed. The announcement of massive losses at its banking arm, questions over the competence of the bank's former chairman, Paul Flowers, then astonishing allegations in national newspapers of a drug-fuelled personal life. And now the Co-op says that it won't be paying the divvy this year. Last year it paid out £8 million to members. This year it says it simply can't afford that. It's replacing it with food vouchers. So if the Co-op can't even perform that kind of advantage to its members, is there really a place for it in modern retailing and banking?
I think it'll survive. The mutual idea is one of the best business ideas there is, as far as I'm concerned.
Whether it's a modern thing and they're, a bit old-fashioned, I don't know.
It's gone down in my estimation a great deal, because we use it a lot, like a corner shop.
Michael McGowan is a former MEP and a leading cooperative member in West Yorkshire. He says the failure isn't of the cooperative movement, but greedy management, who took big risks aimed at rapid expansion.
Big mistakes made about the merger with Britannia Building Society and the proposed acquisition of Lloyds Bank branches, which has cost a great deal of money. And this is not anything to do with the failure of the cooperative business model or the failure of mutual principles. It is a matter of failure of governance.
I worked for a bank for 4 years after I left school.
So why was the Co-op Bank landed with a chairman during that period of economic difficulties whose total experience, as he admitted to astonished MPs last month, was as a junior clerk after leaving school? Paul Flowers was a Labour councillor in Bradford, had been a Co-op trustee, but professionally he was a Methodist minister.
How could it come to pass that Paul Flowers, who on any analysis didn't have the expertise or the experience to do that job, was actually appointed? What was the regulator doing? There's only two explanations. One is a kind of level of gross incompetence at the regulator, that it was virtually criminal, or alternatively there was some kind of undue influence applied. We need to get to the bottom of that because it's an absolute scandal.
The Financial Services Authority told us they had interviewed Paul Flowers, recognised his professional inexperience and insisted on the appointment of 2 deputy chairmen, one with banking experience and one with insurance experience. All this leaves an organisation built up over generations, based on service to the people by being owned by the people, facing issues of credibility. The Co-op says it's working to overcome its difficulties. Recent retailing success and growth is continuing, and appropriate and prudent actions being taken to meet its losses at the bank. But with an ongoing Treasury inquiry, questions are going to be asked for some time to come.
Let me go straight to John Mann. You sit on the Treasury Select Committee. You questioned Paul Flowers himself when he was chairman of Co-op Bank. Would events at that bank honestly have been any different had Labour been in power?
Well, what's unbelievable is the regulator who's paid to check out these people and see they're capable of doing the job failed to spot anything about him, and that the Co-op itself moved away from the traditional Co-op model into trying to speculate and accumulate, buying other businesses with, as has been said to our committee several times, the government and a minister called Mark Hoban, who worked for George Osborne, the cheerleader, encouraging them on every week. Should never have happened. And for those who've been in the Co-op, my grandfather was Co-op butcher on Elland Road in Leeds for over 40 years. I was brought up in the Co-op. It's a crying scandal and shame, a blight on the whole of our country, that this great institution's in such big problems.
David Ward, you were a Bradford councillor with Paul Flowers. What did you know about this man and the experience he had?
I think it's true to say that some eyebrows were raised when we heard that Paul had got this position. He'd been associated with a Co-op in different roles beforehand, so he was well known within the Co-op, and I think most of us who knew him were very, very surprised that he could get such an important position within the bank. Tim, I think the brand is still strong. I've still got my Co-op card in my wallet, and I think that side of it will not lose the faith of people. And this isn't just about the Co-op anyway, is it really? Because many of the banks that were doing really scandalous things over the last 5 or 10 years had people whose backgrounds, whose lives were in banking. So bad behaviour, the fact that you'd been in a bank and got a banking qualification was not a guarantee that you weren't going to do scandalous things.
But you talk about bad behaviour. Did you personally know why Mr. Flowers had stepped down as a Bradford councillor?
I didn't. I left in 2010, obviously, when I got into that House of Commons, and I think it occurred after that time in 2011, I believe. So I wasn't aware of that. Although, having spoken to some of my colleagues, they were pretty sure there were rumours flying around about what had gone on.
So you say Labour councillors did know?
Well, we know that the leader of the group knew.
Interesting. Godfrey Bloom, you worked in the financial sector. What's your take on
Well,
this?
I worked for 20 years in the mutual sector, and I'm a big believer in mutuality. I work for the mutual life insurance companies on the investment side, and I think I entirely agree with Mr. Mann. I think this has been mismanaged. I think it's absolutely scandalous. It's damaged the concept of mutuality, which I deeply believe in, and I think a lot of people in this country, regardless of their backgrounds, believe in. But of course, as I've said before on many occasions, the Financial Service Authority is run by amateurs as well. As you know, I've been a scourge of Lord Turner and his henchmen on huge salaries, but also it's amateur night there. So it comes of no surprise. And I totally agree with David. There's been plenty of incompetence. It doesn't matter what your background is.
Tim,
we need to send some of them to prison.
This is John's actually specialist area rather than mine, but we've had the Financial Services 2012 Act, and I think there's a bill now going, which is in the Lords at the moment, which is about the banking reform and splitting off really the investment and the traditional banking. But now whether that will change, the regulatory system itself has improved, I would hope.
Well, let me ask John Mann, do you have any confidence in the regulation of the banks? We had the FSA, we've now got the FCA. Have we just rearranged the deck chairs on the Titanic?
Yes, we have. It's bankers regulating bankers, and that's a fundamental problem. It's as if there's some kind of special species. If this was any other industry, it'd have gone bankrupt. If it was any other part of life, people would have gone to prison. Bankers, just like politicians, shouldn't be some kind of special breed who are allowed to get away with it. And if we don't do something about it and actually properly hold them to account, we'll see these kind of scandals continuing to emerge. And I fear for the future of the Co-op, not because people don't like the brand. I love the brand. But just today, the Co-op bank branch in Worksop has closed. How much more can they bear financially? That's the problem they got themselves into. And what was government doing, and George Osborne, encouraging them, pressing them on, cheerleading them to try and buy branches from Lloyds Bank, the old TSB branches? He's got questions to answer as well.
More to come on this, no doubt, but we're going to get some more of the week's political news now. Louise Martin has our roundup in 60 seconds.
Boston in Lincolnshire, where 16% of its population are now from Eastern Europe. And as the Prime Minister announces tougher rules for EU immigrants to claim benefits, many here say they are being unfairly portrayed by the media and politicians.
I can take you to all my Romanian friends here in Boston, which are social workers, nurses and stuff like that. And you see they are very good people.
And as anger grows at rising utility bills, Yorkshire Water announces it will peg its price rises to the rate of inflation for the next 5 years, even though legally it could charge more to pay for investment in infrastructure. And controversy over whether reducing speeds on our roads is helping save lives or a money-making contract by the authorities. No guesses for who raised the issue.
Speeding doesn't kill. What kills people, what maims people, is driving without due care and attention. Dangerous driving. Driving like an idiot.
We'll come on to that in a moment. But David Ward, if I can ask you first of all, are you happy with the government's latest crackdown on immigration, this bid to limit benefits to new migrants?
I'm very worried about the way things are going. There's a bit of an immigration hysteria that's taking place at the present time. Nobody wants illegal immigrants, but I think, and we need to crack down and ensure that we can deal with those. But what I am worried about is that it's all just been banded together now, and any of the migrants now seem to be under attack. I'm very, very angry with the comments that have been made about the Roma community, in particular last week.
By your own party leader?
Yes, indeed, and I've spoken to Nick about this. We obviously have a difference of opinion on that, but I think the comments from David Blunt in particular were potentially very dangerous.
Well, Nick Clegg's come full circle. At the last election, he wanted an amnesty on illegal immigrants.
And indeed, I think that Boris wants an amnesty now, so it's amazing how the world turns. But that is a policy really that was actually a pretty good idea of getting people off the black market and into paid employment and actually paying their taxes and so on, but it was far more difficult to explain that to people.
Godfrey Bloom, what did you make of the Hungarian Commissioner's comments that we're now seen as a nasty country?
Well, I think that's just political propaganda. The long and short of it is we don't control our own borders, which means we don't control our own immigration policy. And if you go down to South Yorkshire and Sheffield, you'll find that there's over 30% youth unemployment, and the indigenous population was saying, why are we letting all these people in when there aren't enough jobs for us? And I think until we start answering as a nation these questions, I think we're building up very serious trouble from the future. You know, it's very nasty in certain parts of this country, and the people we've let in aren't good, hard-working Poles like the family I married into. There's some very suspicious people coming into the country now.
And many, John Mann, are still blaming Labour's decision to open the floodgates back in 2004 to people from Eastern Europe. Do you still think the party is going to have trouble with immigration as an issue?
Well, that was a mistake. That shouldn't have been done, in my view. But I've just clashed with this Hungarian commissioner myself. In fact, he keeps plaguing me with phone calls because I've told him to sort out the problems in his own country, where there's horrendous racism, anti-Semitism with Jewish communities fleeing from Hungary, the Roma community has been attacked in the streets. He needs to do his job and sort out the problems in his own country, because we can't have his people being attacked on the street and people being forced to flee. That's not a civilised way to be living in this country or any other country.
Sorry, John, but I just really wanted to congratulate you for saying that, because everybody's talking about the pull factors, the benefits that they're coming for, the hospital treatment they're coming for. What we need to look at is the push factors. Why are people coming here? And it's because of the racism that they face in their own countries. And what we need to do is put pressure on those European countries, which in some cases are using almost an apartheid system, particularly towards the Roma.
Very briefly, Godfrey Bloom, you're now saying you want to stand as a Westminster MP. Where are you going to stand?
Don't know yet, but it'll certainly, if I do, and it's still an if, it'll certainly be in my Euro constituency, so it means it'll definitely be Yorkshire or North Lincolnshire.
You see, I knew you'd come back to politics again. Some would say you're a political slut yourself, Godfrey Bloom. Thank you all for your time today. John Mann, Godfrey Bloom, David Ward. And with that, we will go back to Andrew Neil in London.